Coming up on today's show.
If you're in a position where maybe you need to have an emergency surgery, if you can't speak for yourself, how do people know what you want?
Most people probably don't know what documents they need.
And that way, as I like to say, if life throws you a curveball, you can catch it with grace instead of being hit in the face.
3 reasons you need your important documents together today. Today on Keeping You Organized. Well, hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. We talk a lot about document management on this show. Of course, Smead sells file folders and organizing kits and all kinds of things, but keeping those documents together is an important thing. And a lot of times we think about like end of life. Okay, you got to have them ready for that. But there are other situations and times that you need your important documents together. So we're going to bring on a first-time podcast guest, Annette Adamska. Is that how you pronounce it, Annette?
Adamska, very close.
Okay, Adamska, pretty close. Okay,
very close.
With letsbackupyourlife.com. And Annette, welcome to Keeping You Organized.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I know this is one of your specialties, and we're going to talk about not end of life, because we talk about that kind of stuff, but there are other situations and times when we need to have our act together and have those important documents. And you do focus. Why do you focus on this? What's the backstory to this?
Yeah, so I have been in the professional organizing world since the beginning of 2014, and in the middle of 2015. My husband and I moved from Brooklyn to Durham, North Carolina. And a few weeks after that, my mom had a catastrophic accident while traveling overseas that resulted in quadriplegia. And then she passed a few months after that. So I was thrust in the middle of the very unique situation of someone who did not have their documents in order or their affairs in order. So I learned firsthand what some of the issues were that people were running into, and there are checklists and there are all these ways to help people. But I feel there was this gap, and that gap being the human connection of someone to actually talk through these things and to get them from point A to point B.
Awesome. So that's how you started the company, right? Or were you already doing professional organizing?
Yeah, so I was already doing organizing, mainly focusing in on the residential side of things, move management, working with a senior move manager local here in the Triangle. But once after I had managed my mom's estate, I really just felt this gap and have this real passion about this area, because I mainly don't want anyone to have to go through what I did. And I really think, how can we reframe the conversation, and really how can you live your everyday life to be easier and more efficient, right? And that way, as I like to say, if life throws you a curveball, you can catch it with grace instead of being hit in the face.
Right. Now, you're in Durham, North Carolina. You must know Geraldine Thomas. She's like a legend down there, isn't she?
Well, I wouldn't say just in North Carolina,
okay,
but yes, I do know Geraldine.
In the entire world, yes. Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about those 3 times, maybe other than, end of life, which we know is important.
Absolutely.
What's the first one that we want to talk about?
Well, the first we want to talk about is that unexpected medical event, right? Okay. A lot of times people have just small medical events, right? So they could be maybe in a hospital or out of commission for maybe a matter of days or perhaps a week, right? But people forget that. People always say, oh, I have all this information in my head, or I know where things are. But if you're in a position where maybe you need to have an emergency surgery, if you can't speak for yourself, how do people know what you want, right? So if you have documented, stored, and shared this information, then your loved ones can have access to your advanced healthcare directives to make sure that you're getting the care that you need and want. So that way the loved one can just say, I am doing what my loved one wanted. And then once you're on the other side of that and made that recovery, you then know that your loved ones did what they did because you literally told them beforehand.
Well, now most people probably don't know what documents they need. So is that something that you do in your service, or are there lists out there somewhere where you can kind of check, what documents you actually need?
Yeah, there are absolutely so many lists and checklists out there that people can do to access these things. I think it's really great to work with, to kind of, even if you have a conversation with an estate attorney, because I feel the general documents people need are that will, the power of attorney, and that advance directive. And a lot of people think that they don't need a will. But I think with wills and everything is so specific to the state that you're in,
Mm-hmm.
take a good look, right? Because I live in North Carolina. So if I didn't have a will, the General Assembly of North Carolina decides how my assets are distributed, right? Things may not automatically all go to my husband depending on how things work out.
Right.
Not to be alarmist, but everything is so different and so specific and so unique. I think it's really important just to have all that information.
Now, would you store these like in a file box or in a cabinet, or where would you keep these so that people would know how to get a hold of them?
Absolutely. Well, for a lot of people decide to store things in different places. For those who want to keep things in the freezer, I say mazel tov, and just make sure that someone knows where that is, right? I think the biggest problem is people spend all this time to do these, to put these items together, but then they don't tell other people where they are. And then that can be a real problem if you run into, a medical event or other crisis. So.
Okay, good. What else do we need to cover on emergency document recovery, I guess? Or no, this is really more about the medical, right?
The medical, and this is the story, just the storing of the information, right? So for me, in my own home, and I always recommend all my clients to utilize a fire safe. And the ones that are the file box size are great because you can have things in full size. You can have them, stored in a really efficient way. As you know, Smead has a really great life document organizer kit that I use myself and with my clients to really make sure you know where everything is. And then that way, everything is protected as it can be in case of a fire. And if it's bolted to the floor, if you ever have a break-in, they're not going to make away with those important documents. Right. And, in the case of a weather event, it has the best chance of surviving. Okay,
great. So that's the unexpected medical. We're going to take a quick break now. And when we come back, we'll talk about the other two situations, not end of life, that you need to have your important documents together and really get them together today. So we're with Annette Adamska, and we will be right back. Now there's a place just for you. Life can be busy, and you still have to keep it all together. That's why you like to be organized and in control. Introducing MyOrganized.life, a special place where you can get ideas and solutions to organize what's important to you, your important papers, your important decisions, your important life events. We show you the ideas and products to stay organized in your life. See what's new. Stop by and say hello. Visit us at any time at www.myorganized.life. It's just for you. MyOrganized.life by Smead. Find us at www.myorganized.life. MyOrganized.life. We're back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about the 3 times when you need to have those important documents together and why you need to get it done today. We're with Annette Adamska from the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, right? It's kind of like Minneapolis-St. Paul, isn't it, Annette?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay,
the triangle, there are all sorts of different phrases we use to the area.
Right. Okay, so we talked about the unexpected medical situations. What's the next area or situation that we need to have our stuff together and get it together today?
Yeah. So the other one kind of got alluded to a little bit before the break.
Yep.
And it's about the, emergency evacuation or perhaps a weather event, right? In the past year, there have been all sorts of things from, floods to fires across the United States. So how do you make sure you have everything in place? So again, worst case, if there is a fire, how can things be protected? Or if you have 5 minutes to get out of your home, you want to be able to just open up, for example, this fire safe, take everything out of there, put it in a tote bag, and then you can grab and go and make sure you get everyone else in your family out safely.
Right.
So I think it's a great way, instead of things being, we keep our passports in this place and we keep our wills in this place and we, all those different things, that if it's all in one place, that means you can just grab your family photos and get out the door.
Yeah. What are the most important things that people really need to take with them? I mean, because again, like you say, if you only got 4 or 5 minutes, you probably don't have a lot of time to think, well, I need this and I need this. What would you say are the really key ones that, and I suppose everything can be replaced at some point in time. But
yeah, I think it really, because there are 2 parts of that, right? There are the things that people want to take with the sentimental and the emotional value of it, and then also what are the really practical things to have. So if you do have, any of your like legal documents, any passports, any birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, which oftentimes are needed even years after someone has passed, for proof of death, for lack of a better term. And again, these are all things that can be replaced, but if you have that information and also all of your insurance information in case you are dealing with a natural disaster, how can you be ahead of the curve and have everything already at your fingertips? You can have the number of who you need to call to put in your claim. You'll have your account information. So you can have all those things at your fingertips versus having to try to search for something. And depending on the time and the place, there may not, be cell reception for a little bit or things of that nature.
Right. And do some people, I'm only thinking about this, store some of that stuff on their phone? Like, I'm sure there's probably apps for that too, but, yeah. or even in like a little notepad. I mean, at least the important, maybe policy numbers and things like that.
There are absolutely ways to be able to do that so it's more accessible remotely, right? There people can store PDFs on their phone or in other online storage areas. You can also leverage a password manager and keep a lot of policy information there as well, because many people now log on to their insurance portals online. So you can have a lot of that information can already be there and ready for you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now, when you're working with clients, what kind of system do you set up for them for emergencies? Do you have kind of a protocol or combination of paper and online? What would be a good mix for that?
Yeah, just making sure that all of the things that you really need for that every day, what do you need those important hard copies of and those originals? Because again, they can be replaced. It can just be a lot more. It can take a lot of time and sometimes, a financial commitment to be able to do that. And as far as the other things for an emergency, depending if you have family members who are on certain medications, or if there are other things that are really important in your family's everyday life, to make sure to have either backups of those in other places or knowing, where to acquire those if you ever needed to.
Okay. Well, let's move on now to our third situation or third time that you would need to have access to your important documents other than end of life. And what would that be?
And that would be just if you're out of town and traveling, and let's say you end up getting delayed somewhere, perhaps you're traveling overseas or just visiting family, and let's say something happens in your family and someone needs to access one of these items, right? Maybe you have, maybe your partner ends up needing to go on a last minute trip themselves. Do they even know where their passport is, right? So sometimes it's those little things of where are things to make everyday life a little bit simpler. But then in those bigger situations, how can you really make sure things are where they need to be? Because even if you aren't in your home on site being able to hand someone something, you can then tell them exactly where that is. And then there doesn't have to be any hesitation and things can continue to move forward.
All right. Well, what would be some of the documents or things that people might need access to if they're out of town and, something comes up?
Well, it depends on the family. For some people, there might need to be a passport for someone else. If someone is a caregiver for a loved one and they're out of town, if there are any documents or things they need to give to make sure their loved one is cared for in the way that they need to. And there's different, depending if there's a power of attorney situation or perhaps, you're out of town and you want someone to sell your car for you. Have you done a power of attorney for them so that they could perhaps do that in your absence?
Well, here's an interesting, I gotta give a personal story on this here because recently I was in South Africa and traveling with our 4 kids, 2 of who are 16 and under, and we'd gotten passports for everybody. Everything was great, but South Africa had just changed their rules where you not only needed a passport, but you needed a birth certificate as well. I think it has to do with the trafficking stuff going on there. And we got stopped at the airport and we did not have birth certificates. And it was about 10:30 at night there. Thankfully here it was 4 PM. We called somebody to go to our house, gave them our code to get in. They scanned and basically emailed us the document, the birth certificate, and that was able to get us in. I mean, it was almost a miracle. But, if we didn't have technology to try to get, a copy of our birth certificate, and luckily they accepted it. Otherwise, we were going to we were flying in from Amsterdam, which is about an 11-hour flight, and they were going to put us right back on the flight and do another 11 hours
Go
back.
back.
So definitely technology. And I know personally, I've also used things like Dropbox, and where I know there's certain things I need to have access to. So now, what kinds of setups like that do you work with people on when they want to maybe just be prepared for that? How do you get someone prepared for that?
Well, there's a lot, right? And there are different priorities for every person. So when I work with my clients, everyone starts with what I call the assessment and action plan, where it's a 2 to 3 hour session that we really go through and understand documenting all the areas of their life, because there's the pieces that they can work with an estate attorney or a financial planner, but there are also all sorts of other things that we haven't even touched on yet, right? The invisible threads in your automatic payments, and what subscriptions do you have? Do you have kids? Do you have pets? Are you a caregiver for someone? So there are a lot of, and your social media. So there are a lot of pieces that people don't necessarily think of. And how can I help someone leverage, whether they want to start using a password manager to, again, make their everyday life easier and more efficient, but then also store information and share certain pieces of that information with people now, so that if something were to happen in the future, they already have some of their, backups in check already.
Right.
So,
okay. Well, listen, we're about done here. I want to give you the opportunity to talk about your services, how people can get a hold of you, your website and that kind of thing.
absolutely. Thanks so much. So Backup Your Life is a new kind of professional organizing firm. We're your partner for organizing all of your life's details, documents, and contingency plans. And we create customized action plans where we're your guide to personalized life and legacy planning, preparation, and peace of mind. You can find Backup Your Life at our website, which is www.backupyourlife.com. Will be debuting my new website just later this week, so stay tuned to that, and you'll be able to sign up for my newsletter. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. I like that. It's kind of like, you always hear those commercials for back up your hard drive. Now you can back up your life. Sounds pretty good.
You can also do it while singing the Spice Girls song.
I love it. Well, Annette, great job for your first time on the podcast. We hope to have you back again.
Oh, I'd love that.
All right, great. Well, there you have it, folks. We are now ready for those 3 situations. And if you want to get more details, you can go to our show notes at smead.com/podcast. And I think you're ready for those emergencies. And we'll catch you next time on Keeping You Organized.